Welcome to Freelance Sucks. Here we discuss the dark side of freelancing about which nobody usually talks out loud. In this show, we speak with experienced freelancers, and I'm sure listening to their stories helps you prepare for freelancers' challenges. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Cordt Zermin, an experienced freelance technical product manager with a developer background, a digital nomad who works 100% remotely and is fueled by a passion for tech. So, welcome, Cordt.
Hey Yuri, thanks for having me here.
Super happy to talk to you. And what is the most challenging part of being a freelancer for you?
The most challenging part, good question. I think actually, I would say that, just to give you some context, before I started working as a freelancer, I built a startup in Munich over the course of 6 years. And so I really started there when there were like 0 employees. Like I was the first one, and I built it all the way up to 25. And as you can imagine, like you pour everything into this.
Yeah.
Like if there is any sort of problem, and it really absolutely does not matter what it is related to, you will make sure that it gets fixed. It doesn't mean you fix everything, but you won't just, ignore it. This is just how it works for me if you're building a company. And now, when I then moved on to work as a freelancer, for example, right now I'm working at a company that has like 500 employees, so it's really already grown up, right?
Yeah.
And also, it is not your job and not your task to take care of everything, and so it is really difficult for me at times to see problems and not be in the position, but also not be asked to take care of them. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that I ignore them. I would just point them out, but it is difficult for me to say this is not my cup of tea. Like I have other fish to fry. So and also I got the very clear, like my supervisor told me, I understand it and it makes perfect sense. And I agree with you that something should be done about that, but it's not your job. Please focus on your job. And this is a little bit tough for me because I'm like a person. If I see a problem, I tackle the problem. I just can't help it.
I can imagine it's really hard when you can't do anything, but also it's super hard to understand that it's not your responsibility, because as a startup founder, everything is your responsibility. So yeah, I can imagine. And what is the most time-consuming thing you must deal with as a freelancer?
Communication, definitely, 100% communication. So and that might vary from, let's say, freelancer to freelancer. Like, I think it is different for a DevOps engineer than it is for a product manager. Like, you have different amounts of communication that are required to do your job. In my case, it's a lot of communication, and then you really have to navigate things. So for me, in order to do my job well, I need to make sure that I have all the context that is required to make good decisions. And especially in larger organizations, that means that you need to find out who is the right person to talk to become knowledgeable about a certain topic and to get the answers that you need, or maybe the decision that you need. And so I think I spent a great amount of time talking to people, writing to people, answering to people. And I think another dimension to this, why this really is a time-consuming thing, is that is because, like, just writing something or just saying something is rather easy and you can do it quickly, but writing well and speaking well is difficult and more time consuming. So I forgot the quote that there is, but there's some person who said that, I'm sorry, if I had more time, would have written a shorter letter, and I think that pretty much is on point. Like, you need to make sure that you ask people good, concise questions, give them short summaries that they can, digest, so that you really get the result that you're looking for. So this is hands down most time consuming.
Do you create any templates for communication?
No, I don't. I would say I create templates in my head, and I don't do this intentionally, but I do this by practice. And couldn't imagine that a pre-made template that I put in some place would actually speed me up in things. I rather try to get faster in, structuring problems, structuring asks, structuring decision proposals. Like to me, it is really, I'm now at a point where like you throw stuff at me and be like, we need to figure this out. I don't like, it comes very, very natural for me to just put it in some order, in some structure that I can understand, that I can then communicate. So I think with practice, templates start to emerge in your head, and they are rather unconscious and explicit.
You told us sometimes you have tasks and you need to find who is the best person to tell you, to give you answers and to help you to solve it. It sounds to me a little like a detective work. So if you have this task, like what are steps? What steps do you take to find this person?
So first of all, I try to be extremely clear about what it is that I'm looking for. So for example, I would tell my supervisor, I believe we need this piece of information, and I describe it very clearly what I mean. And then I tell him exactly what I intend to do. I will tell him, I would assume that talking to these persons will help me to figure out where that information is and who has it. And then I will get feedback. I will get feedback either like, go for it, or wait, I know who you need to talk to. It is this person. Mm-hmm. And then by doing so, I kind of get a first idea, and then you just have to be very stubborn and sometimes a little bit annoying, but that's just part of the job. So I will, I would say I have a pretty good system for reminding myself to follow up. So it just doesn't get lost. I will ask until I get the answer, or someone tells me to stop. And then it's just a game of being a little bit annoying, I think.
By the way, about following ups, do you keep it in mind, or maybe add this to some tasks?
Never. No, never. I would put nothing in my head that I do not enjoy having there. Like, there is no point in storing things in our brain that it doesn't like to think about, because our brain is not made for this. Like, you know this, right? There's like 7 things you can remember. If I now tell you 10, you will forget 3 immediately and can recite me 7 afterwards. So what's the point? Like, if I put in there, remember to ask Yuri about whatever, like maybe I forget, maybe I wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, be like, oh no, I forgot to. And I just don't want to have this in my life. It goes on a list. I will be reminded at the right time. And the interesting thing is, when you do this for long enough, your brain starts to trust the process. So if I write down that I, for example, need to follow up on something that is important for me, that I need to get from you, I will 100% completely forget about it. And I think that is okay, because that frees my mind to think about things that are actually, either worthwhile thinking about or need some brain capacity. And I'm glad that I have it then for these things.
Yeah, for me, it's always great, when you write down all you have in your head, and you don't have to have always this feeling like I might have forgotten something.
Yes.
I totally feel you. And what is the most nerve-consuming thing you must deal with as a freelancer?
It comes down to a very similar topic as I said in the beginning. When I was in that startup, when I built that startup, I had a very strong opinion, and I think I should have, on how the culture is. Because basically, like, you are building a company, how you think a company should be built, how people should treat each other, how you should talk to each other, and what is important for you. And that is a challenge, and that is a very rewarding challenge. And the thing is, once you go in as a freelancer, again, this is very likely, unless you are a coach for a culture change in a company, very likely not part of your job to do anything about that. And so there are like most of the things I would say, okay, interesting. That is something where the company I think could do better, but it's not my job to fix it or to do anything about it. Like I'm asked to do a certain job here, so I will focus on this. My line is like sexism and all these kind of things. Like then I'm happy. Like I will put that project, that job on the line. Like if someone crosses that line, because I think this is just unacceptable. It was always, but much more so in the 21st century. So this is where I would say, okay, I don't care. Either we fix this, at least in this team that I am on, or I'm not part of this team.
Do you have mentors in your life?
I wish I had right now, but I used to. I'm not so like, let's say, I'm not actively looking for someone who's regularly there, but I do seek advice from people where I know they are very knowledgeable. You could call that mentorship. It's a lot of them are previous or former working colleagues who are just very bright people that I was fortunate enough to work with. And so if there's a certain topic where I'm stuck and I know they would have good advice, I can just call them and I will definitely make use of that. But there's no specific person that looks after me regularly.
Sometimes people are afraid of, messaging or calling other people because they think that they may steal their time and they don't want to interrupt their life. So how do you feel when you're calling them?
You mean when I call someone and they don't like to be called? Is that the question?
I don't know, just in general, like, do you have any thoughts before calling, or you just like, okay, I'm calling right now, like no thoughts, no brainer?
I mean, so first of all, I have a lot of thoughts on that because I'm quite an introvert. So you can't put me in sales. Like calling people, especially the ones that I don't know, is very challenging for me. It's a hard hurdle, a big hurdle. And then, yes, I do think a lot about that because it is just, I don't know, it's just my personality. And I always hope, and sometimes get a little bit disappointed, but I always hope that people think about how they are taking other people's time or what it means when they do certain actions. And this is also why I think communication is so important. Like if you don't think about it at all, then call someone and try to figure it out. Like, first of all, it will take longer. And second of all, it might yield nothing. And you just wasted 30 minutes of time from someone. But if you take the time in advance, think it through, and then are certain that this is the right person to call, the right person to ask, the right thing to discuss, and you come prepared, then you save everyone's time. And I think this is extremely important, and I try to do it because I think it's just rude to not.
As a freelancer, do you ever feel professional loneliness?
Loneliness. It is a little bit bipolar, I would say, because on the one hand, as I told you, I'm very introvert, so I'm sort of 100% self-sufficient. I do my job, I'm happy. I don't need to be in an office or anything. And then on the other hand, the startup that I worked at we built such an amazing culture that it was just incredibly rewarding. Only going to the office didn't even matter what you did there. Just having fun with the people and getting some work done and work together. So I miss that a little bit, but for example, right now, I try to get a little bit of that every now and then. So right now, for example, I'm visiting friends in Munich, and since the startup we built was in Munich, I just pop in the office of a former colleague, and then I get to spend a nice day with him. So a little bit of it is still there.
Got it. And if your friend wanted to become a freelancer, what are top 3 things you'd advise them to consider before doing it?
So I think top one is definitely that you as a person should enjoy this very idea. And what I mean by that is I think there's a lot of people who enjoy security, job safety. Like, you don't have to think about, am I going to have this job still in 1 month from now? And this, I think, is pretty troublesome for people. I know people who, when they lose a job, are pretty, freaked out. And what's the next one? Or no interviews and all that, and just really stresses them. It's a lot of mental load, and they just need this security. And then I think maybe it is not for them, and that's all right. And for me, for example, it works well because I don't have that at all. Like, it doesn't bother me. Maybe it should, but it doesn't bother me at all. And I think that that's the most important one. Like, you need to be clear that there will be times where you don't have a project. You will have to make an active effort to get a new one. And that's not gonna give you like, freedom for the next 3 years. It will happen again in a couple of months from now. And you need to be absolutely clear on that. And other than that, I think you should have something you truly believe you're good at. Like, it's with everything. Ideally, you have a niche where you say, this one thing, this is what I'm good at, because it makes it so much easier to offer something. Otherwise, it's like, if you say, I can do all the things, like, who's going to hire you for all the things? Like, they need people for specific things. So if you're good at something, that is a great start. And then maybe the third thing is, as I said probably a few times before, communication is important, but if you're a freelancer, it's at least twice as important, at least, because, there is no one standing around and or like watching you and making sure that things work out, like a manager or a leader or a mentor or whatever. Like, you need to deliver, and if you're not able to communicate, it's going to be a very hard one.
Cordt, I wish to have the sky as the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question: if you were starting freelancing today, is there one thing you would have done differently?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Is there anything I would have done differently in retrospect? Wow. I don't know. Like, I was very lucky, I have to say. Like, I started and I had a project within 1 week, which I think is not usual. And then I had another one that was slightly overlapping, and everything worked out well, and I learned a lot. So I at least to that end, I can't say I would have done anything differently. Maybe one thing I would actually do different, but it's more than just with respect to freelancing. It is focus. Like, focus is so important in so many areas of life. And if you do too many things, then it just, you spread yourself thin and it wears you off. So I think I would try to focus more and not try to do so many things at once.
Got it. Thank you so much, Cordt, for sharing your challenges and for having such an open conversation.
Yes, thanks a lot for having me, Yuri. It was a pleasure talking to you. Happy to do that anytime again.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friends. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.